Give me 1 second for that click. Okay, beautiful. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome and thank you for joining our Running Start information session. My name is Dan Alderson. I'm one of the associate principals here at Lake Stevens High School. My role here tonight is just kind of to be a tech facilitator and to support Miss Lewis, who is one of our counselors. Miss Lewis, I'll let you take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Alderson. I'm Stephanie Lewis. I am one of the counselors here at Lake Stevens High School, primarily for students at the end of the alphabet, most of the S's all the way to Z. But I do sort of oversee the whole Running Start program. Not that all of us counselors aren't knowledgeable, because we are, but I just head it up and handle things like this lovely webinar we're doing tonight. So thank you guys so much for being here. I really appreciate it. And I'm just going to go ahead and get started. So the first thing that I'm going to do is just give you guys a brief overview of what we're going to cover today in this webinar. So the big bullet points that I'm going to hit today is who's eligible, who's a good Running Start candidate, that sort of thing, what the application process looks like and what the registration process looks like. We do have Ms. Gallegos here from EVCC to give us an EVCC perspective, and we should also have a representative from the ORCA program, which is sort of a very specific niche within the Running Start program at EVCC, who's going to be available to give us that perspective as well. And then at the end, don't worry if I didn't cover something that you had a burning question about or were really interested to learn a little bit more. We're going to have a Q&A. So if I say something that's a little bit confusing, like Mr. Alderson said, jot that down on your sticky note. You'll be able to pop it in the Q&A at the end, and we'll do our best to answer all your questions for you. And if for some reason we don't get it answered by the end of the night, you can shoot me or your student's counselor an email, and we'll be happy to answer that for you tomorrow. All right, so step number 1, who is eligible to be a Running Start student? All students, you must be a junior or a senior to do Running Start. So you have to have earned at least 12 credits over the course of your first two years in high school, excuse me. Yes, that first year at CAV does count as a high school year. There are some placement requirements once you get in to the Running Start program. You really should have a cumulative GPA of 2.5 or higher. That's going to be necessary to place you into like English 101. Math is the other specific subject area that students have to be placed in. Typically, we want students to have completed Algebra 2 if they're going to take math at EVCC. And that's because Algebra 2 is not considered a college level math course. So while there is courses at EVCC or any other community college that students can take as part of the Running Start program, it's not a college level course. So Running Start won't pay for it, and your family would get charged tuition for that, which can be really expensive. So not being in Algebra 2 yet does not make your student ineligible for Running Start. They can absolutely do what we call part-time Running Start, and I'll dig into that a little bit more later. But they can basically take math still here at the high school and do all their other classes at Running Start if they want. Another way students can be placed in math if things get sticky is to use the AccuPlacer, but that really doesn't happen all that often anymore. Another thing to consider is maybe not necessarily just eligibility requirements, but what sort of makes a good candidate for a Running Start student. Running Start students are taking college level classes at a college. So this is a student that's going to want to advance in their academic rigor in at least one or more subject area. It's going to be a student that has a little bit more responsibility skills. College professors are not going to be emailing home to parents. They're not going to be giving students as many reminders about due dates or assignments, or are you studying for an upcoming test? They're going to treat all Running Start students like they do all their other college students. So those are just some things to consider about when thinking about if you're a student, or your student, if you're a parent, is going to be a good match for the Running Start program. So say you've sat down, you've weighed the pros and cons, you're like, yep, Running Start's the program for me. That's what I want to do. Now what? How do I actually get signed up? Well, for many students at Lake Stevens High School, if you are someone who has done either college in the high school or CTE dual credit this year, and you had to go on and create that CTC link account, you paid some tuition to earn that dual credit from EVCC, you actually no longer have to go through and submit the EVCC Running Start online application. There is now a form here, which I'm going to pause for a minute and say, in addition to posting this whole video after tonight, we're also going to post this slideshow that you guys can click through on this website. All these blue ones are links that you can click. So I actually have the EVCC dual credit update form link right here. You can click right on that, and it's a Google document that your student needs to fill out, and it just basically switches their CTC link account to a Running Start account. So if you've already done that, that's the link that you need to start with down here, which actually a lot of our students have. If you haven't done dual credit or college in the high school yet, no worries. I also have a link to the EVCC Running Start program application. It's done online through EVCC's website. You can Google it and their Running Start, and that pops up as well. So that is live and available for you guys to do. So step one is to either apply to EVCC as a Running Start student or fill out the Google Doc to update your student status from dual credit to a Running Start student. Then you got to pause for a minute. You have to wait. It does take EVCC sometimes 7 to 10 days in order to process your application and get all that stuff sorted out. So once you've got that done, take a beat, be patient. It's expected to take a couple of business days, sometimes as much as 2 weeks to get that done. Once EVCC has processed your application and you get accepted, you will receive an acceptance email from EVCC. You really can't move forward until you get this email. So I know that a lot of students get really anxious. We want to register and get all set up right away. EVCC's deadlines for the first round of applications for Fall Running Start students isn't even until May. So if you're someone that's going to jump online and do this week, don't worry, you have lots of time. So wait till you get this email, because this email is going to give you all kinds of important information that's going to help you move forward. It's going to contain that, you heard me say earlier, CTC link student ID number. That's the big thing that gets your student into EVCC system and allows them to get their placement all squared away and be able to register for classes and all that good stuff. It gives them step-by-step instructions of what forms they need to fill out, any orientation that they need to complete through EVCC. That's all contained in the email. So once you apply, wait for that email. Once you get it, read through, all of the steps. I'm gonna take a brief minute and just take a drink of water here. All right, so once you got that email, one of the big important steps that you have to do next is to meet with your high school counselor. That's me or any of the other Lake Stevens High School counselors. To complete your placement process, you're gonna have to get a copy of your transcript from us, or you can also supply a report card, or if you're in Algebra 2 right now, you can and you want to like maybe immediately place into pre-calculus. Sometimes they'll accept a letter from your math teacher, just saying like, yep, the student's doing good, showing their current semester 2 grades, since those aren't official grades yet. That won't be on your transcript yet. So you can get those documents from the counseling office, and as counselors can help you do that to help get you placed. You do have to complete still a mandatory online orientation with EVCC. There's a link to that here, so you can sign up for that. And then once you do those things, you're going to have a meeting with your Lake Stevens High School counselor, with me. So if you're my student, or Miss Wickland's student or Miss Bowman's student, and you've gotten that email, you're ready to go, you can just send us an email and say, hey, Miss Lewis, I'm ready to sign up for my Running Start meeting. I'm going to reply, offer you some times to meet, and I'm going to attach this Running Start student agreement. It's a pretty decent sized packet that you will have to read through with a parent. It's going to go through a lot of rules, expectations about being a Running Start student. It's going to cover a lot of questions about like, what do I do for parking? Can I still participate in sports? Yes, you can. Can I still come to PEP assemblies? Yes, you can. It's going to cover all those big things. I'm also going to include a copy of, you'll see the initials a lot, RSEVF, Running Start Enrollment Verification Form. I'm going to ask that on top of completing the Running Start student agreement, you fill out the top portion of that form, which I'm going to show you a picture of that in a little bit. And you're going to fill these forms out, and you're going to bring that to me to our initial Running Start meeting. Ideally, all of us counselors would really like parents to come to this initial meeting. This gives you the opportunity to make sure your student understands all the expectations. you understand all the rules and expectations, and you get the opportunity to address any concerns or ask any questions of us from the get-go. And so we're going to meet and we'll go over all of that. And we as counselors will sign your Running Start enrollment verification form. And then actually your students will be responsible for turning in that verification form to EVCC. That form is what lets EVCC know that as a Running Start student, I've met with my high school, I know what I need to do, and my counselor is clearing me to register for the classes that I need to get registered for. Similar to meeting with me, your student will also have to do entry advising, and they will meet with an EVCC advisor, about what classes they recommend that they should take. Are they pursuing a certain AA degree where they need to be mindful about what classes they take at EVCC? So they'll be getting some advising both from the high school side and from the college side. I will say, please remind your students, first and foremost, they are high school students and their high school requirements have to come first if they would like to graduate, which that's what we want for all of our students. So if any of you are wondering, or maybe heard from your students that there's going to be some changes in counselors and alphabet next year, that is true. We're doing a little bit of tweaking. The last couple of years, we've had to divide our alphas where it wasn't necessarily the same for all grade levels. This year, or for next year, excuse me, we have flushed that out. These are going to be the official alphas for all of the next school year. And even if your counselor is changing next year, we are more than happy to meet with. So if you're someone with the last name of SD, this year you might be Mr. Hernandez's student. I am more than happy to meet with you this year to get you signed up for Running Start next year, because next year you are going to be my student and we are talking about registering for next year. If you mix it up, don't worry. We're all happy to work with students, get you guys set up. We're not going to turn you away, okay? So I'm going to give you just one more minute to take a look at this, jot down who your counselor is for your student. Email addresses are there. They're also on the website. This is who your go-to person will be for signing your RSEVF and doing those meetings. So you will meet with your individual counselors by alpha for those meetings. This is just sort of a snapshot of that Running Start student agreement that I told you guys about. It does have a section on here where we are asking that all students and parents, you'll see initial, that they've read each of these, what we believe to be important bullet points, and that they make sense to you. There is a page on this packet for parents and students to write down notes. So if you're going through this and you see some things that you have questions about, or that you're unsure about, or that you'd like a little bit more information on, jot those notes down, and because you're going to bring this whole packet with you to that initial meeting with your counselor, and we'd be more than happy to answer those for you then and clear up anything else that you're still wondering on. Oops, sorry, I clicked too soon. Go back. We're going to require that all students have this filled out and signed by a parent before we'll sign that RSEVF form. And that RSEVF form, you can't register for your classes and get officially signed up until that is signed by your counselor and turned in. So please make sure your student comes to that meeting with this form fully filled out, both by the student and by the parents. This is what the RSEVF form looks like. I told you guys I'd give you guys a brief snapshot. When I say the top portion filled out, it's just that portion up there circled in the gold. It's just the student's name and phone number and all that. The rest of this down here, your counselor is going to fill out for you. At the bottom, the student and parent do need to sign that before it's turned in to EVCC when it's all said and done. But for that counselor meeting, it's just this first part that we need to have filled out. So that when we make copies for our records, we know which student we're filling this out for and can easily refer back to that. This form, so the Running Start student agreement, you're going to do that once, your initial time, once a year. That's all you have to do. This RSEVF, you actually have to fill out and get signed every single quarter. So I'll show you guys in a minute. Throughout the course of the entire Lake Stevens School District school year, there's actually 3 different Running Start quarters. So your student's going to change classes 3 different times. And each time they have to have a meeting with their counselor to talk about what credits they still need, how things are going so far, and we have to sign this again. So this is going to be a form your student needs to be familiar with and sort of keep on hand. So just a little FYI there. This is our running start equivalency chart. So if you're asking yourself, whoa, Miss Lewis said that I have to make sure I meet my high school requirements first and foremost. That's the most important thing. If Miss Lewis tells me I need to my senior history, how do I know which classes at EVCC meet that? Well, we've created this handy little form that tells you and spells out exactly what you need to do. So for English, it's pretty simple, straightforward. Any English course will count for that. If you need a fine arts, you can refer down here and look at that. When you're looking at this form online, and this is on our website in multiple places, the CTE classes are so diverse. There's so many of them that we had to create a link to a whole separate document in order to put all those in there. So you do have to click one more time. But anything you need to know about, does this college class meet this high school requirement, is going to be on this equivalency chart. A couple of things I want to highlight on here that are a little bit wonky, as in different than the rest. The big ones, excuse me, I'll take one more drink of water. The big ones are the history requirements. So to graduate high school, students have to have really specific social studies requirements, and there's got to be really specific things in that curriculum. College doesn't have to, they don't have to meet those same requirements we do. So for the most part, you'll see down here that any 5 credit class at EVCC at the college, that's worth a 1.0 credit class here at Lake Stevens High School. So your student might take an English 101 class, that's worth 5 credits in 1 quarter. That's essentially the same as taking a full year of English at the high school. The tricky part gets to be history. So we're going to say for juniors, taking US history, you actually have to choose 2 of these classes. And yes, they are both 5 credit classes. So we're essentially asking you to take 2.0 US history classes in order to meet your 1.0 requirement. However, you're not getting shortchanged credit-wise. What we do for the history classes is, say your student takes history 146 in the fall, we're going to give them 0.5 of a US history credit and 0.5 of an elective credit. So they're still going to get all those credits. It's just, it doesn't necessarily meet the whole subject area in one class. So just remember, for history, you always have to take 2. Junior year, it's 2 US history classes. And senior year, it's 1 class for civics, which is in this top line, and 1 class for CWI, which is in this line in the yellow boxes. So that's just a funky one to be aware of. And then finally, the exception to the 4 credits equals, only a 0.8 instead of a 1.0 is PE. Any active PE class, that's a 4.0. Which most of them are. If you're unsure, your student can email your counselor. We actually round those ones up to a 0.5. So we're not gonna, if you're taking a 2 credit PE class and only getting a 0.4, we're going to give you that 0.5. We'll round those ones up. But if your student's unsure, just have them talk to your counselor about that. I just wanted to let you guys know that that's not too tricky. Important application deadlines are coming up. Like I said, that initial round of applications for classes starting in September, those aren't due till May 2nd. So you've got about 2 months to get this done. So you've got time. It's rare that we have students start mid-year. Those are really extreme extenuating circumstances only. But those application deadlines would be October 11th and February 18th for winter and spring quarter. This visual over here kind of illustrates the whole 3 quarters thing that I was talking about. So a student at Lake Stevens High School is going to have 2 semesters. They're going to take 6 credits, 6 classes worth of 0.5 credit per semester. So over the whole year, they're going to earn 6 credits at Lake Stevens High School. A full-time running start student, so that means they take no classes at Lake Stevens High School, can take 3 5-credit classes at EVCC each quarter. So that actually equals 9 high school classes over the course of the year. So your student does have the opportunity to actually get ahead on credits, create them some cushions, some wiggle room. I'm just going to really quickly add that no, Lake Stevens doesn't graduate students a semester or a quarter early, even if you have the credits. I'm sorry. I know that can be a bummer for students, but honestly, like, you just get another quarter to take more free college classes. So we're kind of doing you a favor. Don't get out early enough to pay for things. Just keep letting running start in the high school pay for your college classes. I promise you it's a good thing. To graduate high school, you need 24 credits. Most of you know this by now because you have been at least 9th and now you're in your 10th grade year. If you are wondering what are all the specific 24 credits you need, we do have this handy dandy graduation checklist for Lake Stevens High School posted on our website. This is not a required form for anyone to fill out, but if you would like to use it, it is linked in here. We do have it in other places on our website, and it really outlines all the individual subject area requirements that you need. It kind of spells out some standard Lake Stevens High School classes for covering that. But again, you can use that equivalency sheet to sort of make sure you're matching what you can take at EVCC to meet that. I really always encourage students to look at Skyward and their graduation tabs when trying to remember what credits do I still need. Skyward's the place to go. I know it's tempting to look at that high school and beyond plan. That's a great tool. It has a lot of really awesome features, but it's not a perfect science. And sometimes the programs don't talk. And the program that we use to track your graduation requirements is Skyward. So what says in Skyward is what I care about. So if you always go to Skyward to check your graduation requirements, you're going to know for sure you're getting the best information. Okay, so sorry, this one's a little bit blurry. It wasn't blurry when it was small. I'm going to talk a little bit about what it means to be a full-time Running Start student versus a part-time Running Start student. And the gist of it is, if you are, the only way you can be a full-time Running Start student is if you are taking all of your classes at the college. You don't take any classes at Lake Stevens High School anymore. That's what it means to be a full-time Running Start student. Now, to be a part-time Running Start student could look a lot of different ways. That can mean you take one class at the high school. And by the way, you can take one class at Lake Stevens High School and still qualify to take 3 classes a quarter at EVCC. So you could really get ahead on credits that way. But you could also say, and this kind of chart helps you kind of balance out how you can do that. The way it works is we start with, so this table should really be flipped, because depending on the number of classes you take at the high school determines how many credits Running Start will pay for you to take at the college. You can take more. I don't recommend it. You'll be charged tuition, and I think your student will be really overwhelmed. But this chart lets you know what Running Start will pay for, what we as a school recommend you being your maximum number of credits to take at the college based on the number of classes you're taking at the high school. So if you're taking 3 classes at the high school, you say you've got 1, 2, 3 here, you could take 2 classes a quarter at EVCC if you wanted. So that'd be 3 credits there plus 2 times 3 is 6. You're still getting 9 credits that way. You don't have to do a full 9 credits either. If your student is taking 3 classes at the high school and maybe they are a volleyball player and they know fall semester they're going to be pretty busy, so that quarter they take 1 class at EVCC, and then when sports are done they take 2, fall and spring, that's totally fine. They just can't exceed the maximum, and they'll want to talk to their counselor to make sure they're still getting at least 6 credits for the full year. So there's a lot of wiggle room in here. That's kind of one of the joys of Running Start, is there's a bit of play based on the number of classes you take. One thing I do want to point out is when we set your students' classes at Lake Stevens High School in the fall, we can play around with it a little bit in the fall before school starts, that first week of school and all that. But once you're in them, you're in them. We will not adjust Lake Stevens High School classes to accommodate Running Start classes in the winter or spring quarters. So your student does need to be mindful of that whatever classes they decide to do at the high school for the year, they're committed to the year, and we really can't move those around. And that's because, as you see in this graphic over here, our timelines don't add up. That's not us like trying to be difficult. It's that our semester 1 ends in the middle of Running Start's winter quarter. So it's not a smooth transition. They don't line up. And so that's why you have to stick with your LSHS classes all year long, unless it's a semester long class, and that's fine. You don't have to take something on that other side, but we're not moving math from 2nd period to 5th period, 2nd semester, because now you want to take, an EVCC class at a different time of day. So just something to be mindful about. These are just some sample schedules of what like a full-time Running Start student look like. Most students, if this is your first year as a Running Start student, some of our students that have done college and the high school for English might not have to take that English 101, because you might already have that English 101 credit from EVCC, but most students will need to take English 101, US history, and then math. You'll notice that like as a Lake Stevens High School student, you pretty much take English all year long. You pretty much take math all year long. That's not the case at EVCC. Once you've taken this English class, remember you've met your 1.0 of English. You can be done with English for the year. So the next quarter, maybe you're taking Spanish, chemistry, and oh, sorry, you got to take that second US history class. But you're not taking math anymore either. So that's one thing that a lot of my students really like about Running Start is if there's a subject that they're not super jazzed about, yeah, they got to dig into it and they got to spend more time on it for those couple of months for that quarter while they're at Running Start. But once they're done, they're done. They don't have to power through it all year long. They get to change up their classes 3 times a year. So that variety, that changing it up can be really appealing to a lot of students. And honestly, EVCC has a much more diverse course catalog than Lake Stevens High School does by nature of being a college. This is just one of probably a million examples of what a part-time Running Start schedule might look like. Maybe your student hasn't quite finished Algebra 2 yet, so they're going to take it here with us, which is definitely what we would recommend. And maybe they're like, you know what, science isn't my strongest, so I think I'm going to stick with science at the high school, not ready to advance in my rigor and take college level science. So I'm going to take algebra and I'm going to take chemistry at the high school. So that's 2 classes here. That means that they'd be eligible for 2 classes a quarter at Running Start. So maybe they're going to do their English and their history. This world language, the Spanish, by the way, take Spanish 122 and then Spanish 123. Your students essentially knocked out that 2 years of a world language in 1 year at Running Start, actually in less than a year, in 2/3 of a year. So if you're someone that maybe didn't start world language as soon as you might have liked to, you're entering your senior year, you haven't done it yet, you're panicking a little bit about college, no worries, you can knock that out at Running Start. So just another one of those little pros of being a Running Start student. Thank you for your patience while I take drinks of water. One of the big things about being a Running Start student is how important it is, especially for anyone interested in being a full-time Running Start student, to communicate and stay in touch with the high school. That means your student really needs to be logging on and checking the Lake Stevens High School website, especially for seniors. We post announcements on there. Upcoming assemblies, upcoming sports events, upcoming senior announcements, those get posted on there. Unfortunately, because of Lake Stevens firewalls, which are definitely in place for very, very, very good reasons, your students can't use their LSSD email to communicate with their Running Starts teachers and to sign up for EVCC. So we do have a lot of students that get in a bad habit of forgetting to check their Lake Stevens email because they don't need it on the day-to-day. But I really try to tell students just once a week, log into your Lake Stevens High School email address and at least scan for emails from me. Look for emails from your counselor. Look for those big Blackboard messages from Miss Ibelia. Because like, for example, full-time Running Start students, that's how I'm going to communicate with them that they need to schedule an appointment with me to sign up for their next RSEVF meeting. And they can't sign up for their classes until they do that. So they really still need to check that email. Also, keeping up on Skyward, logging into Skyward, keeping track of your graduation requirements, that's really important. And we do have a Running Start Google Classroom that students can be a part of, and they can sign up for that with their Lake Stevens High School email address, and I believe they can have that forwarded to their personal email address as well. So if I know an assembly is coming up, when I know Running Start, like it's time to sign up for the next quarter, I'll post announcements on that Google Classroom so students can get notifications that way as well. All right, Ms. Arantxa, would you please give me a break to drink some water and give us a perspective of what it's like from the EVCC side?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Stephanie. And good evening, everyone. My name is Arantxa Gallegos, and I oversee our dual credit programs at Everett Community College. So if some of you have done college in the high school, CTE dual credit, that is probably my name you have read in a lot of your emails. So what I'm just here to highlight about our Running Start program is just some things for students to think about. Stephanie has done a wonderful job going over, what does it mean to take classes at the community college and how that translates at the high school. Those are definitely important things to note. But I also want to highlight how students are going to officially begin a college transcript. Some of you might have already begun a college transcript if you have participated in college in the high school or CTE dual credits. I always like to say that it's so much easier for you to change your name than it is for you to change your grade on a college transcript. Like if you go on to get a master's degree or your doctorate, or you go to law school or medical school, or if you're looking for jobs and they ask for your college transcript, they're going to want to see the grades that you earned through EVCC while you were a Lake Stevens High School student. But also I want to note that whatever grade you receive in a class through the Running Start program, it's going to be the exact same grade that's going to appear on your high school transcript. And I also think it's very important to note that progress report cards do not exist in the community college. You might be very accustomed to receiving a progress report card in the mail sometime throughout the semester system. And that might be really exciting for parents because you get to see how your student is progressing. Unfortunately, that is just not something that we do. And your high school counselor will not see your grade until we have sent them a final grade report at the end of each quarter. And that's a little bit where that student responsibility and communication comes into place. Students, you're going to be fully responsible for your academic record at the college and fully responsible for making sure that you are meeting our college deadlines, which will be different from your high school deadlines. So this is a perfect time for you to learn how to read and respond to emails. Believe it or not, once you graduate high school, emails are going to be a thing of your regular life, especially if you move on to a university. UW will always send you an email. I'm just saying. But also, you want to make sure that again, you're communicating with your high school counselors. We want students to graduate with a high school diploma. If you are very fortunate to be very diligent and focused and on track to graduate with an associate's degree by the time you graduate from high school, that is amazing. And a lot of our students are able to earn an associate's degree because they are constantly communicating with their high school counselor, making sure they're on track to graduate, and they're communicating with their assigned program advisor at every community college to make sure that they are taking classes that they need for a degree. Even though your high school counselor will only advise you on your graduation requirements, and our program advisors here will only advise you on your associate degree requirements or certificates. In a way, they're both working to make sure that you are on top of your classes and that you are meeting requirements for both. That equivalency chart is actually golden for our faculty. If you bring it to them when you are meeting with your program advisor, they will love it because they want to make sure that they are helping you in registering for that specific political science 101 class so that you can get credit with us and then credit with your high school. Another note about college communication is that we communicate directly with the parent, and this is due to a federal law called the Family Education Rights Privacy Act, federal law. So it's not us, it's not the college. I'm not trying to communicate with parents, but essentially what FERPA manifests itself at the higher education level is that the responsibility and communication of a student's account goes from the parent to the student in higher education. So even though the student might be 15, 16, 17 years old, or even 14, if you're participated in our other dual credit programs, we can only divulge information about the student record, whether it's registration, grades, transcript information directly with the student. But because we are operating under a state dual credit program, we are able to share, final grade reports with the high school counselors. And if there's any questions about registration, Stephanie or another of the Lake Stevens High School counselor can reach out to us and we can do some little investigating. But a lot of our communication is directed to the students. And I do just want to end my portion by saying that this is a great opportunity for students and it's a great tuition cost savings for families, but students with their parents should really think about what it entails to become a college student at such a young age, and all the responsibility and time management and organizational skills that it's going to require students to be successful in the Running Start program. Thank you.
All right, and now we have a slide about our ORCA program. And Ardi is here from the ORCA program to give us a little introduction about that. So Ardi, take it away.
Well, thank you, Stephanie and Dan. You always host such a spectacular event, and I'm so appreciative of you inviting us in, and what a fabulous turnout. I can see the number of participants down there. And you've received this tremendous overview, and it's a lot of information for you to process. And so just as Arantxa and Stephanie are talking about, is the student needs to advocate for themselves. This is truly a collaborative partnership between the college and Lake Stevens, and students treat it as a little collaborative partnership between you and your folks about how you can best set yourself up for your future. And hey, what if there were a program that overlaid the graduation requirements for Lake Stevens and the Associate of Arts and Sciences degree that met all your core graduation requirements in both places? Wouldn't you be interested? That's ORCA. So the Ocean Research College Academy takes the history classes, the political science, the geography, plus infuses it with math and science. And so obviously, if you have a STEM interest, I would really love to see you at our April 20th information session hosted at ORCA. And even if you're not STEM passionate, I always tell the story of a student who went to the University of Washington, and we just took 15 students down there on Friday, and they were hosted by ORCA alumni who were attending there, and they went through 3 different laboratories and met 3 different professors. And the student that told the story is, I had to take core distribution requirements, just like your requirements to graduate from LSHS. The same thing happens when you head off to university. You take math, science, English, and history. And you may take it with 500 of your closest friends. And so the ORCA alumni said, I took Ocean 101, where I was on a boat 9 times. I collected the data, I analyzed the data, and I presented what I learned from that to the community. And his frat brothers took Ocean 101 at the University of Washington, and there were 150 people in a lecture hall being told about their learning. And so that, to me, he didn't continue on in oceanography. He became, I think, a political science major, but it was such a powerful distinction of how do we learn best. In my very biased perspective, is you learn by doing, you learn by reflecting on your learning, and you learn by collaborating with others. So the ORCA program, core to our mission, is to engage students in this place right out in front of the Waterfront Center where we reside in Everett. And Stephanie, you were out on our boat, right? Yeah, in October, we took a counselor cruise out to experience what it's like to do research on a boat. And so that's a really quick overview of ORCA, hopefully tantalizing you to learn a little bit more. And I have taught, I'm embarrassed to say, 35 years in Western Washington, from university to community college to high school. And the difference that I've seen in all 3 of those levels is the self-advocacy for the students when they enter into the college realm. And I'll give you an example through math. You would think I'm a mathematician based on the story that I'm about to tell. But if I am describing your high school math course right now, where you spend the first 10 minutes of the class going over your homework from the previous night, you spend the next 20 minutes learning new material, and then you spend the final time together in class starting the homework for the next night. And if I've just described your high school math class, it's not what it's going to be like in college. So you're going to do new material every single day. And if you have questions about it, you're expected to see the instructor during their office hours, which may or may not coincide with the time that you're taking the class. And so I learned from students that it can be intimidating to go to office hours. And essentially my secret sauce for you tonight is the best way, and going to office hours introduces you to the instructor and it connects your learning to them. So number one, they see that you're interested and engaged. Number two, they can see your thought process. Because if you go in with a question that says, this is what I did, this is what I learned, and what do you recommend I do? It's just opening the dialogue from that instructor. And I have a quote from a student who basically said, I used to think that asking questions meant I wasn't learning. And at Orca, the most powerful way to learn is by asking and attempting to answer your own questions. And so students, my word to you is go to office hours, ask questions. If the instructor sets it up to ask questions during class, that's phenomenal. And just be prepared for the learning to happen both in the class, but for you to prepare to learn by doing your homework outside of class. And the standard non-science rule of thumb is you'll be going to class for less time than you are in your high school. What time does LSHS start? Do you guys start at like 8 in the morning?
8:05.
8:05. So then you go to what, 2:30-ish?
2:45.
Yes. So you get control over your day. You pick the classes that you want. And the most common classes at a college campus are 9, 10, and 11 o'clock. And then you're done for the day. So what do you do for your remaining 3 hours? Maybe go back and hang out with your friends. But it's our expectation that you're spending, for every hour of class time you spend in class, you're doing 2 hours of preparing outside. So you are steeped in your own learning and constructing material. And parents, I love that you are hopefully all here together as a family, and the tuition savings that you are able to mobilize through this opportunity is really, really powerful. But spend some time to make sure that this is what the student wants, because they're the ones doing the work. You're not going to get to help them with their homework, or maybe you can, but know that they're the ones who are the active, really engaged in their learning, and it needs to be their decision. So would love to answer any questions that you may have programmatically from Stephanie, Arantxa, or from me, as well as encourage you to attend our last information session of this recruitment year. We are recruiting the 20th group of students to come to the program. So cohort 20, and our application is going to be due on that May 1. And you are simultaneously a Running Start student at Everett Community College while you're applying to the ORCA program. So come on the 20th and learn more. So thank you, Stephanie, Dan, and Arantxa, and everybody in the audience. And I think I left us 15 minutes for questions, Dan. Thanks for the cue.
Thank you so much, both Arantxa and Ardi. Yes, I did get to go on the counselor cruise, and it was for sure the highlight of my year. I got to see seals. I got to see a whale out in the wild for the first time in my whole life. It was really cool, guys. If you have any interest in, especially like marine biology or anything like that, like definitely go to the info session. I can't lie, it was the coolest day of my year at work for sure. Okay, I'm just gonna go over, like, reiterate some of the big pros and cons really quick, and then we're gonna move to Q&A. I promise I won't take long, because I know a lot of you have a lot of burning questions. So some benefits. Yes, you could, maybe, earn an associate's degree and a high school diploma at the same time. That's cool. You do have to keep a minimum GPA of 2.0 at EVCC. Some of those rules got a little not so strict during COVID. That is over. You got to keep that GPA, or you will get put on like academic probation. You'll get a warning. We might have to pull you back. So make sure you're keeping your grades up while you're there, okay? That is important. You can save lots of money in college tuition, because Running Start's going to pay for those. There is still some mandatory student fees, so it's not like $0 here. But compared to college tuition, it's a fraction of the cost, and I mean a very small fraction. Like Ardi was mentioning, it's a very flexible schedule. However, with that flexible schedule, you do got to provide your own transportation. We cannot bus you to and from EVCC or Everett. And if you take classes here at the high school, if it's first period, you can take the bus to school, but you got to be able to leave. You can't hang out on campus if you don't have a class here. That's a safety reason for you. You are not accounted for. If there was an earthquake or a fire or an emergency, we wouldn't know if you were supposed to be here, if you were missing. It's not because we think you're a safety concern on campus. It's because we can't account for you on campus if you're not in a class. So you cannot be here if you don't have a class here. EVCC is going to have a lot more of an adult atmosphere, and then it's going to lead to, you could be in classes with 18, 19, 20-year-old students. So again, make sure you as a student have the maturity to handle that exposure, and that you think your student has the maturity to handle that exposure. You have to be more independent. Like Arantxa noted to us, the college is not going to communicate to the parents. They can't. They legally aren't allowed to, and we don't get progress reports either. So if you're struggling in a class, we won't know until your final grades come in and it's on your transcript, and it's kind of a done deal at that point. So if you're struggling, you got to speak up. You got to let me know. You got to let your college professors know, all of those things, because you don't really have the safety net of your high school counselor or your parents checking up on that stuff. Also, final benefit, you could earn 9 credits at the college versus the 6 credits at the high school. And with that, we are moving into the Q&A session, where Mr. Alderson is kind of going to lead us. But the 3 of us panelists are all here to answer questions and help out.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everybody. So this is the time for you. If you can find that spot in the bottom of your browser that has kind of the double bubbles there, the Q&A. If you have a question, pop them in there and we'll go ahead and try to answer those. We can answer general overall questions. There may be some very specific questions that you might have. If that's the case and you pop it into the Q&A, we might just ask you to email your counselor. So our first question, Sahib is asking, do classes at the college affect your high school GPA? Ms. Lewis, would you grab that one for us, please?
Yeah, you bet. And the answer is yes. Absolutely. So when you are taking classes as a Running Start student, that means that you are taking college level classes that are simultaneously counting for your high school graduation requirements, which means those credits are 100% being transcribed onto your high school transcript once that is done. So English 101, for example, if you take English 101, that's a 5-credit class. So that's a 1.0 at the high school. So if you get a B in English 101, that is going to have the same impact on your GPA as if you got a B both first and second semester in English at the high school, because our classes are only 0.5 and the number of credits attached to that grade impacts the GPA. So it's like getting a grade in the class for the full year for both semesters. That is the impact that it has on GPA.
Awesome, thank you. And Ms. Lewis, would you grab the next one as well? Could a student take 3 classes at EVCC and Algebra 2 at the LSHS in the same year?
Yes, absolutely. And I would say that's probably one of the most common reasons that a student would take that many classes. There's that little bit of wiggle room where students can be essentially more than full-time enrolled. And that's because of situations like that, where a student might not qualify to take college level math and would have to pay for the tuition. You could take math 98, 99, whatever it is at the college, but you're gonna have to pay for that. So we'd much rather have you take it with us. Usually what we do is do it first period, start of the day, 8:05. Get it out of the way, and then you have the rest of your day open to explore all those EVCC classes. Sometimes if your student's an athlete, then we'll do it 6th period, since we know they're going to be here on campus right after that anyways. But the short answer is yes, that's absolutely possible.
All right, perfect. And I think the next question from Sarah, what type of an AA degree could you possibly graduate with? For example, AA in psych, arts and science, etc. Miss Ardi or Miss Arantxa, would one of you grab that, please?
Ardi.
Sure. So great question, Sarah. It's called the Associate of Arts and Sciences degree, also known as the Direct Transfer Agreement. And what that means is if you earn that while you're still in high school, you have fulfilled those general university requirements at most of our state and border state universities and colleges. So it's a broad range. It's the breadth of your education for those first 2 years of college. So it's the AAS.
Awesome, thank you. And the next question, Arantxa, can you still get an AA without doing full-time Running Start?
The answer is yes, if you have college and the high school classes under your belt. But they would definitely have to be a good number of credits. The associate's degree is minimum 90 credits. So you need to have sufficient credits to be able to earn the degree by the time that you graduate from high school. Sometimes students may need one or two more classes, and you can still take maybe those additional classes during the summer quarter before you continue on at a university. But really the only way to get an AA without doing full-time Running Start is to have participated in another dual credit program.
Awesome, thank you. And then Rachel is asking, can they take courses online at EVCC instead of always driving in? Arantxa, would you grab that one, please?
Yes, so we do offer courses online at EVCC, and Running Start students are more than welcome to take those courses if they feel confident enough for the self-pace of an online class. I do want to note that it is possible that not all classes are being offered online, and what we have seen, I think in the past 2 quarters, is that online classes take to fill up pretty quickly, and sometimes what is left over are the in-person classes. So definitely requires some flexibility if a desired class or desired mode of class is already full and there's no wait list.
Awesome.
And
Thank you.
I'll just really quick piggyback a little bit on what Arantxa said there with her saying how those classes fill up. If you're a brand new Running Start student, so the way colleges do registration is they let their upperclassmen register first. So if this is your first quarter at EVCC, you might have a later registration window. Also, you can't register until you turn in that RSEVF form. So it's important to get those turned in right away. But I would say, like, the newer you are at Running Start, the less likely you are to get into those classes that fill up quickly. So maybe have a backup option in mind.
Awesome, thank you. So Mark wants to know, our student who is currently in Running Start found that not all required courses are being offered every quarter, wants to know the best way to plan ahead for this for the other student who is applying for Running Start this year. The mapping of courses seems to need to be done quarterly. And then thanks us for loving and says he loves Running Start. Arantxa or Ardi, can you chat about that?
So I think for this question, I would require a little bit more information. For example, I know we offer a variety of anthropology classes each quarter. So I'm wondering if maybe it's a specific anthropology class that is needed for Lake Stevens High School. I would actually recommend emailing Running Start so we can have a better idea of what are the intended classes that the student is trying to register for. I know a lot of our introductory classes are ones that are consistently offered every single quarter, but if there are some very specialized classes like Women in History that might just be offered once a quarter or once every other quarter.
Awesome, thank you. And then Dixie wants to know if we can give an example of the student fees at EVCC. Arantxa, would you get that for us?
Yeah, definitely. So at EVCC, we have student fees and then we have class fees. Student fees are fees that were voted by the student population some time ago, and every single student is charged this fee every single quarter. So that could be a technology fee. That's how students are able to access computer labs. There's a campus enhancement fee that helps students access the fitness center as well as other buildings and resources on campus. And then we also have a green sustainability fee that students are charged. And then certain classes will have certain class fees. Like if you take a science class with a lab, there's a lab fee. Some of our accounting classes have a material fee, which means that it already has a textbook embedded. So the type of fees will vary by the type of classes, and the amounts that a student has to pay every quarter will vary on the number of credits and the type of classes they are taking, but it could range between $60 to $300 in fees each quarter.
Awesome, thank you. Casey wants to know if LSHS provides bus passes for Running Start students. Ms. Lewis?
Unfortunately, we don't. That's part of the transportation. Wow, I can't say that word right now. I'm tired. I've been here a long time. The transportation piece, thank you. That comes with being a Running Start student is you do have to be able to provide your own way of getting to and from EVCC on a regular basis. Occasionally, in like rare circumstances, counselors can get resources to get like, a bus pass for maybe a week or two or a day. Like, because of extreme extenuating circumstances from certain resources. Sometimes they're there, sometimes they're not, but it's certainly not something that we regularly provide Running Start students, and not something that you should plan on having when you're assessing whether or not Running Start's going to work for you.
Awesome. And
I
Shannon,
just had to, oh, sorry, I just had to piggyback Stephanie, because the one regional card for all, which has the acronym ORCA, I get calls on it all the time, so you can purchase, and I know that some places in Snohomish County have provided free ORCA cards for students, so you can purchase a reduced fare bus pass.
awesome, thank you. And Shannon wants to know where we get the packets from, Miss Lewis.
So we are going to post those on the LSHS planning guide website under the Running Start tab. But also your counselor, once you've applied to EVCC, you've got that email, you said, I'm ready to go, I'm ready to meet with my counselor. Mrs. Lewis, I'd like to set up my initial Running Start meeting with you. My standard is going to be to reply with that packet and the RSEDF form. So it'll be available online, or you can reach out to your counselor to get that as well.
Perfect. And can we explain the diversity requirement, Arantxa?
Yeah, definitely. And you might find that diversity requirements is sort of a requirement that you'll find at the other universities and other community colleges. But at EVCC, we do emphasize the importance of understanding diverse perspectives in our society. So by establishing a diversity core requirement in different areas, particularly in our humanities classes. So think of your history classes, as well as in our social sciences classes, like anthropology, psychology, sociology. We're hoping to better prepare students in being an active citizen and understanding diverse perspectives.
Perfect. And Parneet wants to know if you can take Algebra 2 at the college. Arantxa? Yes,
we have a class that I believe the equivalent to Algebra 2 at Lake Stevens is Math 96. You definitely want to double check that with your high school counselor, because this is a college that is considered not college level, and it's a class that you can take at the high school. You will have to pay tuition for it. There are a few students who go down this route because you can finish the class in 10 weeks and then move on to college level math in the next quarter. But just keep that in mind. It's still a 10-week class and you will have to pay tuition for it.
perfect. And Ardi, what's the acceptance rate at the ORCA program?
Varies year to year. Usually, let's say around 75%, sometimes up at 80, very rarely down at 60, but you have good odds of getting in. And you're going to write 3 essays and submit a letter of recommendation and submit your high school transcript.
Awesome. And Yusuf wants to know, can I not go to the library at the high school to study or anything like that? Yusuf, you can not come to the high school unless you have a class here, brother. We have to be able to know who's on campus so that we can account for them. Miss Lewis, you had a thought?
Just with the exception of the after school learning commons. We do say, hey, like if you're struggling in English or math, we do have excellent math and English tutors at the high school, and you can absolutely come during that like open session after school to the learning commons to access those tutors. So you can't be here during the day and just be like, oh, it's 5th period, now I don't have a class, I'm gonna go pop in the learning commons, but you can't come after school.
Oh, perfect.
I can just add, we have a beautiful new learning center library opening up next quarter. The fitness center that students are charged as an elevated running track and phenomenal equipment. And there are so many spaces for students to use on our campus. So they're open pretty much all the time.
Awesome. And Ardi, how hard is it to get straight A's at Running Start?
It's a great question. So sometimes in your high school experience, when you have turned something in and received a perfect score, you've been conditioned to getting that. So many of your college courses may solely be based on the papers that you submit, as well as the tests that you take. So if you're a diligent student, motivated, hardworking, engage in those conversations with your faculty and spend the time doing it, you'll do just fine.
Perfect. Thank you. And Arantxa, the accreditation of EVCC?
Yes, we are accredited by the Northwest Commission on Colleges and Universities, and that's the accreditation, I believe, for all the community and technical colleges in the state of Washington.
Awesome, thank you. And Tara wants to know if most classes during the same time at the high school as high school classes, and wondering if they will conflict. Stephanie?
Sometimes the answer is yeah. I mean, there's an absolute definite possibility that your classes could conflict. Kind of like Ardi said, a lot of very popular classes are 9, 10, 11 o'clock. So sort of that late morning, mid to late morning period. But I know they offer evening classes, and I know they have early morning classes too. So that is why when you sign up for classes at Lake Stevens High School, if like sometimes I might have students who are like, oh, I'm taking 2 online classes at EVCC. So I'm going to take my 2 classes at Lake Stevens High School, like second and third period, because I don't want to have to get up for first. But then they get into winter quarter and they can't take their classes online. And it's smack dab in the middle of when most of the running start classes are. And then they email me and they want to change their schedule. And I say, remember when you signed that running start student agreement that said that your high school classes are set in stone, you have to pick a different class. So I do say if you're planning to do both, I would try and either bookend your classes at the high school at the beginning of the day, like do the early classes is usually what works best. Or if you're an athlete, bookend them at the end of the day. Those later afternoon classes is going to give you maximize your wiggle room and maximize the amount of overlap that's going to happen. But that is the downside to really trying to be a true like 50-50, like I'm going to take 2 here and 2 there. It can get messy and complicated. There's pros to it, but it can be kind of a pain too. It can.
And my apologies, I forgot the last part of that question. Will they conflict with after-school activities? Yes, they definitely can in the same way. Yep. And can a student do part-time 1 year and full-time running start in the next year? Ms. Lewis?
Yep, you sure can. So a student might need algebra 2 as a junior, so they'll take algebra 2, but maybe that's the only class they want to take, so they're considered a part-time student. They're junior, and then senior, they're like, you know what, I want to take all my classes at the college. That's no problem. Each year at the high school is a fresh start. You can choose to take as many or as few classes here as you want to.
And the Lawson family wants to know to ensure you get your diploma at graduation as opposed to having to pick it up later, since EVCC ends later than the high school. Do you just have to make sure your high school requirements are completed before the final quarter at EVCC? Ms. Lewis?
So nobody, if I'm remembering correctly, actually gets your diploma at the graduation ceremony for one. You have to come back to the high school and pick that up. But you're right. EVCC does end after Lake Stevens High School. So ideally, remember how students can like take 9 classes at 9 credits at EVCC versus the 6 at the high school. As counselors, we try to work really hard with our students to encourage them to meet all those requirements by winter quarter of their senior year, because then that means those spring quarter classes are just those free extra college classes that I talked about, and you don't need them to graduate. So if you don't need it, then you don't have to worry about it. If you do need it, what we'll do is in May, counselors will send an email to students asking them to basically get a form signed by their professor stating that there's a reason that professor has a reasonable expectation that they will pass that class. Most of the professors, as long as you're doing well, will sign it, but EVCC teachers have no obligation to sign those forms. And I will say that every now and then a student's not doing well enough or something like that, and a professor won't sign it. And we draw a hard line there. If you cannot get that form signed, your student will not walk at graduation. So that is something to keep in mind as you're entering your senior year and planning your running start classes. If you're my student, I will be encouraging you to get all required classes taken care of in both fall and spring, or fall and winter, excuse me. And then sometimes, like if you're down to like you need 1 elective, but you're taking 3 electives at EVCC in the spring, all right, you got good odds that at least one of those 3 professors will sign it, right? So counselors will work with your students on that, but you could potentially need to have a form signed. And yes, if you don't get it signed, you don't walk at graduation.
Awesome. And one clarification there, we are one of the few high schools in the region that actually does give the actual diploma out at graduation. So it's okay. It's okay. And Natalie wants to know, how do 0 periods work into your schedule, Ms. Lewis?
If you mean 0 periods at the high school, those classes, I'm sorry, I can't remember off the top of my head what time those start. I think it's like 7:10 or something like that. So it's the same as any other class, really. If you're taking it like you're taking WAVE or something like that, you're taking that for the year. It's going to be much earlier in the day. I would say it's not super likely to interfere with your EVCC classes. But I'm wondering if you're asking, does it still count as like your full-time versus part-time status? Does it? Yes. It's still a class that you are enrolled in and taking at the high school. So if you take both 0 period and first period, it impacts the number of classes you can take at Running Start the same way taking first and second period would.
Awesome, thank you. And Amanda wants to know if parents are encouraged or allowed to attend the students meeting with the high school counselor. Amanda, tell Camden I said, hey. Miss Lewis, go ahead.
We super encourage parents to attend the first meeting. We want to make sure that you as parents completely understand what your student is signing up for, and that you and your student are on the same page and that we've answered all of those important questions. I really encourage students, if they feel like they're ready to be a Running Start student, like kind of start dipping their toes into that adult world. Moving forward, I would say we welcome parents that want to come, but I encourage my students to be able to manage that on their own and to be able to come. They certainly should be able to do it without you. They shouldn't need to have you there, but we absolutely will accommodate whatever family's comfortability level is. But your student's going to be having to do a lot of things on their own at the college, excuse me. So I think being able to come in and meet with their counselor and talk about what classes they still need to take is a reasonable expectation for a student to be able to do if they're ready to do Running Start.
Awesome. And the next person wants to know where they can find the Running Start student agreement form and the RSEVF. This video will be posted on our website a little bit later, along with the PowerPoint or the Google Slides that Miss Lewis has created, and links will be in there. So you can find that on our website. Shannon wants to know if it's challenging to get core classes at taken care of at EVCC. Arantxa or Ardi?
It's not challenging if you do the ORCA program. So it varies. We have let's say, for example, English 101 helps fulfill a high school English requirement. We have 40 sections of that class. So students can take their pick, whether it's online or in person. There are some subject areas where we have like sections, political science being one of them. So it is very common to see students still take core high school classes in their fall or winter quarters of their senior year. So you can always get into them, but you might need some flexibility if you don't get it because it's full or whatnot.
And I would say all Running Start student registration is linked to getting that Running Start enrollment verification form. And every college prioritizes the number of credits a student has to enable them to register in a time sequence. So getting your forms in early and on time allow you to register for those classes that are going to be the high demand. And the closer you get to meeting the highest demand class, the more priority you have, but you still got to do your paperwork.
Okay, perfect. So folks, we are almost 10 minutes after our close time. And we're going to go ahead and try and peel through the rest of our questions. We keep getting more questions though, so we want to be thoughtful for Arantxa and Ardi's time. They're not getting any extra pay from this, I'm sure. So your next Starbucks is on me and Miss Lewis. Miss Lewis, I'll pick up your part of that bill. So we're going to try and go ahead and get through the rest of our questions. Friends, if you would like to start typing in some answers, we said that we weren't going to do that, but let's go ahead and start that. But Stephanie, if you could grab Amanda's question. If a student earns a total of 30 credits, 12 from the high school and up to 18 at EVCC, what happens to the extra 6 if they earn both the diploma and the degree?
So there are lots of students actually that graduate Lake Stevens High School with more than 24 credits. And that's okay. In Skyward, it'll just keep adding to that electives column. That's where you'll see them populate. Once a specific core requirement has been met, that's where all classes go, is in electives. So if your kid like loves math and takes a bunch of calculus classes, you only need 3 math credits to graduate. They're all going to go in that elective column. But what it's really going to do is, as your student goes to apply to maybe like a 4-year university or something like that, it's going to demonstrate advanced rigor. It's going to demonstrate that you've gone above and beyond those expectations. And those grades are going to continue to populate and add into the cumulative GPA. So taking a bunch of classes just to have extra credits, not like, you want to balance that with, okay, but am I balancing my workload so that I keep my grades up too, especially as you consider what's my transcript going to look like if I'm going to apply to a four-year university after that.
Awesome, thank you. Josh wants to know if he can take 3 classes at EVCC and a class at Snow Isle. Miss Lewis, would you grab that one, please?
Yes, unfortunately, you can't. You have to choose to be either a Running Start student or a Snow Isle student. Students cannot participate in both programs.
Awesome. And Carolyn wants to know if students can eat meals at the high school.
If you have a 4th period class at the high school, that is when our lunch takes place, and that is when you can be on campus to eat lunch at the high school. But without a 4th period class, again, we go back to the fact that we have no way to account for you, and know that if you are here or absent or missing during an emergency, so unfortunately you cannot come on campus just to eat lunch.
Yeah. And Dixie, not all classes at EVCC are online or in person. Arantxa, Ardi, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, so the majority of our classes are in person, and there are some that are online. But again, it varies by the type of class, and online classes do tend to fill up much faster. So if you are someone that is interested in an online class, again, submit your enrollment verification form as quickly as possible so that you can register as soon as possible.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And Amy wants to know, for a junior who takes English 101 first quarter and decides to take the second English and EVCC sequence during winter quarter, would it count for senior year high school English, or would the second English need to be saved for senior year to count as senior English? Miss Lewis?
From a high school graduation standpoint, you need to take 4 credits in English. So you could absolutely graduate high school. If you took both of those junior year, that would be fine. The only hiccup is sometimes if you're applying to four-year universities for traditional freshman entrance, sometimes certain colleges want to see you take an English every year, and they might not count it as a senior English. So to graduate high school, no problem. Colleges, I always encourage my students, just take one senior year, because then you know for sure you're good. If four-year university is not on the table, then don't worry about it, you're fine. But otherwise, it's sometimes safer to still take it senior year, even though yes, it counts for graduation requirements.
Thank you so much. Folks, we have gone over by about 13 minutes. If we could ask you to not put any additional questions in, I would love to be able to lock that down. I'm sorry, I can't. We're going to try and get through the remaining questions we have. So Angie, Stephanie's typing an answer to you. Parneet asks, if you already took a semester of senior civics, what class would you take instead? Parneet, you would just need to take whatever other history class you have, or other classes you would need to fulfill your high school requirements. Sebastian, hold on. Sebastian's asking, where is it possible to find all the forms needed to enroll into Running Start? No worries, Sebastian. We're going to go ahead and post this and the Google Slides that we had presented on our website, and you can get access to all the forms there. Mason, Miss Lewis is typing an answer to you. And Parneet, yeah, this is specifically about EVCC, not about Cascadia College. Hold on. John asked, can a student who is applying now take EVCC courses this upcoming summer?
Yes, an incoming Running Start student can definitely take classes during the summer quarter, but please note that Running Start does not fund the summer quarter, so you will have to pay tuition. And we also do not send your summer grades to the high school. You're going to have to either submit an official transcript from EVCC in order to get your college grades earned in the summer transcribed on your high school transcript.
Awesome, thank you. And Naomi wants to know if we apply for 9 classes at EVCC as a full-time Running Start student. Miss Lewis?
Do we apply for 9 classes for EVCC as a full-time? If I'm understanding your question correctly, A full-time Running Start student can earn 9 credits throughout their whole year in the program. So each quarter you will be registering for 3 5-credit classes is how you would earn those 9 credits. So you're not really applying for individual classes. You're applying to the program, and then each quarter you register for classes based on your enrollment at Lake Stevens High School.
Awesome. And Tara, the code for the Running Start Google Classroom will be in the slideshow. Miss Lewis, would you want to pop that in there for that question at the top?
Yeah, we won't share that. That is for current Running Start students only. There's zero necessary information for you in there unless you are a current Running Start student. So we will share that out to students once we get, your individual counselor can share that with you when you have those meetings and you officially get signed up. That's not something that we just post out district-wide.
Okay, perfect. Love it. We are down to just a few questions. Ardi, is it better to take pre-calc at EVCC or the high school?
It totally depends on what the student plans to take next. So if you are planning on going on to calculus, I might suggest taking pre-calc at Running Start to build your experience with those instructors and build your preparation for what you're taking next. If you're not planning to go on and you can do it as college in the high school at Lake Stevens, that could be an option for you as well. So it's all contingent on what you want to plan to take. If you were going to take calculus at your high school and take either college in the high school credit or advanced placement, we would probably recommend college in the high school because it's not contingent on the score you receive on May 12th or whatever.
Awesome. And our last question of the evening, Isabella wants to know if there's parking available for students at LSHS who may be going back and forth between college and the high school. The answer is yes, you can get a parking pass to park on campus at the high school, but remember our parking on campus is on a first come, first served basis. If you are here first period for a class at the high school, your chances of getting a parking spot are much, much greater than if you were to be a third period student here at the high school, because the parking lot will likely be full by then. Folks, thank you so much for being with us. Miss Lewis, thank you for such an excellent presentation. Ardi and Arantxa, email me your coffee orders and I will go ahead and send those your way. Families, thank you for having joined us. We're going to go ahead and log off the meeting now. And thank you for being here. Again, this will be posted on our website just as soon as it processes and kind of spools through YouTube's playlist. Thank you so much. Grateful that you were here.
Thank you both. Fabulous job. Gosh, those kids know exactly what to do and how to do it.